Hey friends, how's it going? Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're well. Today we're talking about that monster of the cologne fragrance world, Lattafa. So this is part 2 of my Lattafa cologne fragrance buying guide. A few months ago, I did part 1 where I went over 15 different Lattafa fragrances, let you know what they are clones of, about how much they're gonna run you, some of the notes in the fragrance, and whether or not they're worth checking out, because some definitely are, and some maybe not so much. So today we're going over 15 more of the biggest Lattafa cologne fragrances that you can buy, and I'm gonna let you know all of that information. That way you know whether or not a particular fragrance is worth checking out. All the fragrances I talked to you about here today are linked in the description below. And when it comes to Lattafa fragrances, and honestly just fragrances in general, it does make sense to look across a few different websites before you make a purchase.
You are looking at a prime customer, everybody. 2 days free shipping for this guy.
And especially when we're talking cologne fragrances, because sometimes on one website it might be listed for like 45 bucks or even $50 or something like that. And then another place it might be listed for 30. Some of the stores that I have used the most when I'm shopping for this type of fragrance are fragrancebuy.ca, JOMASHOP, Triple Traders, The Perfume Box, and Beauty House. Now I don't have codes for all of those fragrance stores, but I do have them for some of them, so here are those codes in case you shop at some of those websites. You can save a little bit of extra money, which will of course make these fragrances a little bit less. Now one thing to keep in mind, those JOMASHOP codes, they change every couple months or so, so if you're watching this in the future, the codes have probably changed, so you can check out, I guess, a more recent video and get the current codes there, and they also only work within the JOMASHOP app, so you have to download that, then you can use the codes to save a little bit of money. All right, 15 fragrances to go. The first one we're talking about is one of Lattafa's most popular releases, Asad. So if you start to look Lattafa up, you know absolutely nothing about them. This is gonna be probably one of the first 3 fragrances that you see mentioned. It is enormously popular, and over time, it has dropped in price. So you can find this one for about $21 at discounters, sometimes even a little bit less than that, approaching right at 20. So very, very affordable, and this one is a clone or alternative to Dior's Sauvage Elixir, which is a very expensive designer fragrance. So being able to pick this one up for 20 bucks is a great deal. Now in terms of notes, this one has black pepper, tobacco, patchouli, vanilla, amber, woods, and even coffee. So the note breakdown doesn't actually look super similar to Sauvage Elixir, but when you spray it on, you'll immediately know, oh yeah, that's what's going on. Now, it's not exactly a one-to-one with Sauvage Elixir. It's got a little bit of a twist to it. It still has that kind of woodsy spiciness, maybe not quite as aggressive as Sauvage Elixir can be, a touch sweeter as well, but still, really, really good performance, absolutely close enough that you can use this in place of Sauvage Elixir. And for 21 bucks, this is a great buy, which is one of the reasons it is so popular. So Asad, yeah, that's worth checking out. So one Asad down, let's talk about the other Asad fragrances, and I'd imagine as time goes on, there will be even more Asad releases that come, but for now, let's talk about the ones you can actually buy. Next up is this one, Asad Bourbon. Now where this is new, or at least the newest one in the Asad line as of this video, it's gonna be more expensive than the original. This one is gonna run you about $32 as of now. I would imagine as time goes on, that price will drop down a little bit, but for now, low 30s. In terms of notes, this one has Mirabelle plum, also pink pepper, amber, bourbon vanilla, and cacao, along with a bit of lavender. And this one is not really a direct one-to-one with another fragrance. This happens sometimes with cologne fragrances in general, also with Lattafa, where they'll release something, and yes, it might smell similar to a couple other things out there, sometimes even a multitude of different things, but it's not really like a direct one-to-one with another fragrance. And to me, that's kind of how this comes across. So it's a little bit like you take the Most Wanted from Azzaro, and also a bit of Born in Roma Intense from Valentino, and then also a little sprinkle of Scandal Absolu from Jean Paul Gaultier, which is going to be where that Mirabelle plum comes into play. So it's kind of like a mixture of those fragrances, maybe a little bit more toward the Born in Roma Intense Most Wanted side of things, like a blend of those two, like I said, with a sprinkle of Scandal Absolu. But it's kind of in that wheelhouse. Essentially, if you like one of those three fragrances, you'll probably like this one. Very appealing and sweet, easy to wear, a compliment puller, solid performance, and at 32 bucks, compared to those other fragrances that I mentioned, once again, a really, really good buy. And I would say that Asad Bourbon, especially if you're into those modern, sweet, warm fragrances, probably would work extremely well for you. Maybe even better than the original Asad. And then the last Asad Zanzibar, which came out in between these two, and this is the cheapest of the Asad fragrances. You can actually find this one for about $17.50. So it is real cheap, very, very affordable. In terms of notes, it's got vanilla, coconut water, iris, lavender, and black pepper. And when this one was first announced, everybody was assuming or expecting that it was going to be a clone of Le Beau Le Parfum, which makes sense. Le Beau Le Parfum, especially at the time that this came out, was not very easy to find in the US, and it was really in demand. You know, a fantastic attention-grabbing fragrance that you could wear spring, summer, or fall, honestly winter as well, that at the time didn't have any really like spot-on alternatives. So everybody was assuming Le Beau Le Parfum. And then this came out, and it's not really Le Beau Le Parfum.
That's a bummer. Okay.
This one is sort of its own thing, and for a lot of people, it just misses the mark. And I would say to my own taste, between these three, that one is clearly my least favorite. It is sweet, but in a sometimes slightly off-putting way, and at times, for me, it feels like the notes aren't quite working together all that well. Now, this is an original bottle. I bought this when it first came out, when it first released. And I had heard somewhere, I think iFragrance Official said that they were going to be like reformulating Asad Zanzibar. I don't know if that's true or if it is, when that would happen, but it's possible that Lattafa changes Asad Zanzibar up because it didn't really have a very good reception, which is also why it goes for so cheap. So Asad Zanzibar, as it stands today, I wouldn't really go for it. I know some people do love it, but I'm not a massive fan of that. All right, let's talk next about Al Nashama. So this one you can find for about $27, and it's an alternative to Initio's Paragon. And it's not the only alternative to Paragon that Lattafa has. We'll talk about another one a little bit later. Now, in terms of notes, this one has plum, bergamot, leather, amber, pink pepper, and patchouli. And it's really, really good in terms of the bang for your buck. It gives you that very appealing, sweet plum opening with a little touch of citrus, grabs your attention right away, smells very good in terms of quality. It's got a bit of fresh spice and at times feels like a hint of powder kind of lurking in the background, but still under $30, an amazing alternative to Paragon. Is it the best alternative that Lattafa has to Paragon? We'll get to that, but still, 27 bucks, very solid. There's also this one, Al Nashama Caprice, which is also about $27. And this one is an alternative to La Nuit de l'Homme Bleu Electrique. Now, if you're unaware for any reason of Bleu Electrique, that is a very interesting release. And by interesting, I mean somebody at YSL was hitting the vape pen a little bit too hard when they decided what to do with that one.
Dude, sick. Dude, stay vaping.
Again, this is from my perspective in the US, but basically here it released and everybody was like, oh, that smells fantastic. Basically smells like La Nuit de l'Homme if you gave it a fresher blue fragrance twist. Like you still maintained that La Nuit de l'Homme DNA, it smells like La Nuit de l'Homme, but made much more versatile, more contemporary, easier to wear in more situations, even more of a compliment puller, and better performance than the original La Nuit de l'Homme. So people were like, this is fantastic. And legitimately, like 2 months later, after it was released, discontinued. In the US, couldn't find it anywhere.
Cease and desist. Understood?
So at this point, if you want that fragrance, basically, and again, you're in the US, you have to go to like eBay and pay $200+ for a bottle and hope that it's not somebody trying to rip you off with a fake or something. So this one, being $27, is a godsend. In terms of notes, this one has cardamom, ginger, citrus, geranium, mint, lavender, amber, and cedar, and it is actually very, very well done, thankfully. Because there are some other alternatives that will get you about as close as this one does, but there are some that are pretty terrible. I would say though, under 30 bucks, this is just about your best bet to get something that's gonna give you a similar vibe to Bleu Electrique. And even though these are not the same at all between Al Nashama and Caprice, if I could keep just one, I would keep Caprice. Next up on the docket is Jasoor, which has a very interesting looking presentation and is gonna run you about $25. Note breakdown wise, this one has apple, cardamom, bergamot, tobacco, lavender, tonka, and leather. And this is going to be a clone of Coral Fantasy. Valentino Uomo, born in Roma, Coral Fantasy, for $25. And this one is extremely close to getting you spot on. Maybe more so than anything else that we've talked about so far. Now, a lot of these other ones are still really, really, really good, but this one gets you like 90+% of the way to smelling just like Coral Fantasy, to the point that, you know, smelling it in the air, in the air.
Bruh.
That you could.
It's just about the same. You've got that very appealing, sweet, fresh, crisp apple. As soon as you spray it on, little bits of tobacco as the fragrance dries down, never going overtly heavy or anything like that. And it's a fragrance that you can wear all year round. Daytime, nighttime, doesn't matter. For $25, that is about as good of a fragrance as you will ever smell. Now we have Mashrabya. This one is a little bit more expensive, about $35 or so for this. And that is an alternative to Smoking Hot from by Killian. And it's another fragrance that has apple. More specifically, this one has apple shisha as one of the notes, along with dates, cinnamon, caramel, vanilla, touch of smoke, and tobacco once again. And the apple in here is more sweet than in Jasoor. Really, really attention grabbing. A little bit sugary and syrupy, but not grotesquely synthetic. It comes across very appealing, like I said, not headache inducing. Unless you went really, really heavy, then it could be, because it is pretty strong. And I think that as of right now, this one and Veneno Black from French Avenue are the two best smoking hot alternatives. And between those two, this one is easier to find at more places. So that means as of right now, as of this video, if you're looking for a smoking hot clone or alternative or whatever, this is the easiest and best one to find. Now something very different, Pisa, which looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa and basically feels like pewter. It is heavy. And it looks high end. I mean, it maybe looks a little tacky to some people because it is pretty ostentatious, but it doesn't look cheap and it doesn't feel cheap. You could use this as like a nightstick or a weapon if somebody breaks into your home. Oof, yeah. So price on this one, about $35. And in terms of notes, this one has a lot of citrus. There's mandarin orange, there's lemon, there's bergamot, also cedar, sandalwood, and amber. And this is one of those ones that could remind you of a few different things. And it's really because of the way the citrus hits in the opening. So the fragrances it could remind you of are Vibrato from Suspiro, perhaps Tiger from Bulgari, and also Afternoon Swim from Louis Vuitton. It's kind of right in that wheelhouse, in that style. Again, it's going to be very citrus forward, very fresh, also kind of sweet, especially as it dries down. You get more of that amber that comes out that lends more of a warm scent profile. But yeah, it's right in that wheelhouse. Those three fragrances, maybe leaning a little bit more toward like Vibrato with Afternoon Swim sprinkled in, kind of something like that, right in that wheelhouse, like I said. Absolutely more of a summertime fragrance, summer daytime, and quality very good. All right, let's switch gears and go with Art of Wood next. About $35 for this one, and it's a clone of Parfums de Marly's Perseus. You may be surprised to find that Art of Wood does indeed have wood as some of the notes. More specifically, cedar and vetiver, but there's also grapefruit, bergamot, rose, and vanilla here as well. And while I said that this is inspired by Perseus, a clone of Perseus, it is not a one-to-one with Perseus. So this is another one of those Lattafas with a little bit of a twist. And it is a little strange. It has like a skunky green aspect to it, almost like a bit of a cannabis note in here or something, a bit of a smoky aspect to it as well. So it's not exactly the same as Perseus, because Perseus is probably going to remind you more of something like Terre de Maison Givre, something in that wheelhouse. You know, very clean, stripped down, woodsy, and natural citrus, like a little bit of a rindy aspect to it. But this one, like I said, definitely more green, heady, skunky, cannabis note-y with a bit of smokiness as well. So while it will remind you of Perseus, it is Perseus with a little bit of a slightly dirty twist, which may or may not appeal to you. Follow that one up with another interesting bottle, Art of Nature 1, which has a 3D camel poking out of the bottle and also has kind of like a blurry looking desert sandscape landscape. It looks like it was printed on like an old, I don't know, is it like bubble jet printer or something? Very dotty. Lots of dots. Art of Nature 1, in terms of price, about $45, making it one of the more expensive ones here today. And it is a clone of Oud Maracuja from Maison Crivelli. Let's give it a spray. Note-wise, this one has fig, plum, leather, rhubarb, oud, ambergris, and vanilla. It's got a little bite to it, you know, it's got a little funky aspect. And I would say if you're looking for a safer clone to Oud Maracuja or of Oud Maracuja, then Azure Oud from French Avenue is a little bit easier to pull off with this one, but still really similar to the Maison Crivelli. So with this one, there's like this little bit of a sour, syrupy vibe to it when you first spray it on. Kind of lurks underneath the scent, and when you smell it, initially it may not hit you, and then kind of on the back end, you're gonna get this like, yeah, just kind of a funky waft. And I would say it does not work super well for me. I don't really enjoy that. It's not something that I like very much. And I think for 45 bucks, there are infinite other alternatives out there of other fragrances that I personally would go for. If that doesn't bother you though, absolutely still check it out. It just would not be my choice for an Oud Maracuja clone. Then there's also this one, Art of Nature 2. So this is Art of Nature 1, Art of Nature 2, and they, interestingly enough, come in different shaped bottles, as you can see. This one is a little bit taller and thinner, and this one is squatter and wider. And no camels here. No, we've got two horses. I guess like a mom horse and a baby horse, a mare, and they are running through canyons, looks like. And it has that very blurry aspect to it. This one is also about $45, so same price between both of these. And this one is Parfums de Marly's Altair. So in terms of notes, very similar to that fragrance. It has vanilla, guaiac wood, cardamom, citrus, olibanum, and orange blossom. I think between these two, clearly Art of Nature 2 is the better fragrance. Also, I do like Altair more than Oud Maracuja, but just in terms of the overall scent profile, like how well it's done, this one is better. No funky aspects here, nothing off-putting, nothing weird. It's well done, it's sweet, it's smooth, it's easy to wear, big compliment puller. And whereas this one I think is clearly inferior to Azure Oud, this one can stand with Liquid Brune, which is also by French Avenue, interestingly enough. Like they both cloned those two fragrances and put them into their own lines for whatever reason. I don't know who sat down somewhere and was like, you know what? Oud Maracuja from Maison Crivelli, Parfums de Marly Altair, they go hand in hand, baby. We're cloning them at the same time in the same line. But yeah, this one can go with Liquid Brune, very similar in a lot of ways. I wouldn't say it's better, but I would say it's right there with it. And so it's gonna come down to just which brand do you like more for a lot of people. Another 3D bottle up next. Lattafa really loves the 3D bottles. This one we're just gonna call 1886, okay? The line name is
La collection d'antiquités.
Exactly, which translates to the collection of antiquities, 1886. But like I said, we're gonna keep it 1886 to keep it from becoming a cringy, mispronounced French mess. I don't want to cause that pain to you. So this one is about $35, a little bit less than the Art of Nature ones over here. And note breakdown wise, it has iris as one of the main notes, along with white chocolate, white tobacco, vanilla, cinnamon, and bergamot. It has like a steampunk-esque car on the front, like it looks like a Model T, except it has screws instead of lights. Yeah, I don't know. Seems like a bad idea. It's like an AI generated old-timey car. Just go to an AI image generator and type in like old-timey Model T car, steampunk. And this one is, you know, vaguely reminiscent of like a Dior Homme Intense type fragrance. It's not exactly one-to-one with Dior Homme Intense. It's not quite as heavy as Dior Homme Intense is. You know, it doesn't have as much of that like depth of the iris. It doesn't come across as lipsticky, as makeup-y, creamy. So it's a little bit like kind of fresher vibe on Dior Homme Intense to an extent. And I know what you may be thinking, like, well, isn't that just Dior Homme original, that would be that, right? And like, yes, but no. But I guess you could say also that, yeah, like a little Dior Homme original, just not as heavy on the iris the way it comes across. Still a little bit lipsticky, but it doesn't have that same like, oof. As it dries down, it gets a little bit closer because you have those other notes coming out like the chocolate, the tobacco, and then it starts to get closer to what Dior Homme Intense is going to bring. Still smells very, very good. And if you like Dior Homme Intense, you'll very much like this one, I would imagine as well. And 35 bucks, quality, very, very good. All right, next one, 1910 in the same line. And this one has a motorcycle. Notes here, tonka, vanilla, rose, cedar, apple, and osmanthus. And this one is 1 million elixir. And this does a very, very good job of getting 1 million elixir across. To me, this is closer to 1 million elixir than this is to Dior Homme Intense. Again, not that this smells bad, it doesn't, but this gets you like 90% plus to 1 million elixir. Great performance, very sweet, but has that little bit of rose and some of the other notes there to kind of take away some of that sweet edge, make it more wearable for fall and winter. Big compliment puller as well. And then there is 1505, which they give a black bottle instead of a white bottle, and it's got a pocket watch on the front. Again, about 35 bucks, same price for all three of these here. And this one is Cherry Smoke from Tom Ford. Whew. Now this one has black cherry and a bunch of it. There's also saffron, incense, osmanthus, once again, guaiac wood, and styrax is some of the other notes. And to me, of these three here, this one is the one that stands out the most. And this one is also the one that may work for you the least, or it might impress you the most. Essentially, that one of these three is the one that's gonna kind of stand out the most for better or worse. Like I said, the opening, strong with that cherry, really strong. That is the main thing you're going to pick up. I think it smells great. I think it smells eye-opening, a little bit different. As it dries down, you get more of that smoky aspect coming out, hence the Tom Ford's name, Cherry Smoke. And it's essentially in that order, right? You get the cherry first, the smoke after. I think it smells great. I also think that of these three, it's the one I would wear the least, but it is a very good alternative to the Tom Ford if you are seeking out something in place of Cherry Smoke. And you remember way back with this one, I said that they have another Paragon alternative. It's this, Vintage Radio. That one is about 30 bucks nowadays, so not too expensive. The price has dropped on it. In terms of notes, it does have plum, just like all Nashama. There's also Palo Santo, lavender, sage, and sandalwood. And I do have to say that between All Nashama and Vintage Radio, if I were gonna pick just one, the one that I think to my own taste is the better alternative to Paragon, it would be this one. I like Vintage Radio a little bit more. It is sweeter than All Nashama. You got more sweetness off the top, and as it dries down, it maintains a little more of a sweet edge compared to the other. I really enjoy the rich, kind of creamy, woody aspects that it has as it dries down. And between the two, I get better performance with Vintage Radio. So the difference between them is only $3, and I would rather pay the $3 extra and get this one if I were looking for a Paragon clone. So there we go, guys. There's 15 more Lattafa fragrances with the prices that they're going for as of this video, a lot of the major notes of each one, what they smell similar to, and whether or not they pass muster. For the most part, all of these are really well done, with a couple of outliers that I don't really like very much, but most of the other ones are very good. So that is 30 Lattafa fragrances now in the books as part of 2 different guides. Maybe in a few months I come back with part 3 and 15 more. God knows they got enough, man. I could probably do this every 3 months with 15 brand new releases. Like they pump them out. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.